helping people to understand that the business is just a tool for achieving broader life-based goals and outcomes. And if that business is the only thing, you're missing the opportunity to direct the goals and the outcomes that you want, utilizing the business as the tool to get there.
Yeah,
y'all do it better than anybody else. You are so clear. The other point I wanted to make is the ability to think most clearly are going to dominate business in the next 10 years. As technology ramps up and lowers the barrier of entry, it's the people that can think through and strategize and then hold themselves accountable to show up day in, day out. Those are the ones that are going to win. And the systems and the processes that you guys provide through the transition up to either the buying or the selling point make all the difference in the world.
Welcome to the Exceptional Companies Podcast, a podcast for purpose-led entrepreneurs looking to master the art of buying, selling, or optimizing small businesses. Your host, Chris Seegers, founder of Exceptional Companies and author of Selling Main Street, has over a decade of experience starting, buying, and leading successful businesses. He's here to guide you through the complex world of business transactions and growth. Each week, we dive deep with actionable insights, expert interviews, and real-world strategies to activate and equip you to live exceptionally and build exceptional businesses. Now, let's dive into today's episode. Here's your host, Chris Seegers.
Welcome to the Exceptional Business Podcast, hosted by yours truly, Chris Seegers, where we explore how to buy, sell, and optimize your small business. I've got a great friend and guest, Greg Wiggins, here. He's got a business called Redbird Consulting. I like to start with what I love most about the person and maybe just a quick anecdote. So Greg will solve any problem you give him. He's a professional problem solver. That's what I love. We worked in multiple businesses together. We always put him in the worst situation and just say, hey man, we need a solution here. Can you help us find a solution? And he's one to get that done. The anecdote is we used to call him the tattooed Ken doll because he's such a good looking human being that anytime a female came into our office, it was distracting. We had to lock him in the supply cabinet to make sure we could get business done. But anyways, Greg, welcome to the show. Today, man, we're talking about clarity. So as we help people buy, sell, optimize their businesses, or just activate and equip people to live exceptional lives, which is our mission for the family office, we have found that people really lack clarity. And so we started putting some programming around 4 quadrants that I think are critical. I want to touch on all 4, but really dig into one. The 4 quadrants are clarity of your worldview, clarity of your dream future, so where you want to go, clarity of your current reality is number 3, and then clarity of the blueprint. So oftentimes with clients, customers, or in our own businesses, we have found we don't have clarity. And so instead of trying to build this roadmap, we say, hey, let's get clear to get there, and we start there. So yeah, man, love to, first of all, welcome, but love to hear just from you a little bit about when's the time that having extreme clarity in your life might have helped you in your entrepreneurial journey, with a client, in your family. Like, I really want to drive this clarity point home before we dig into the 4 quadrants.
Absolutely. First off, man, thank you for having me. There is not a person in this world that is better equipped to advise people and strategize on small business consulting, acquisition, and divestiture. I'd say this on anything that I was on and to anybody that I talked to. You and your crew are by far and away the best in the business. Your care for the people and your alignment with clients to achieve their outcome is not common in this business. So appreciate you having me on, man.
Thanks,
all right.
I appreciate it.
Clarity.
Here we go. Clarity.
Clarity. First off, we have access to any amount of information and strategy that has ever existed and likely will ever exist. Absolutely. Technology and AI allow us to reach like the depths of strategy in ways that we've never been able to do before. Mm-hmm. I say that to say this. If you are reliant upon technology, if you're reliant upon constant input, and you do not allow yourself the time to sit and be still and be quiet in some analog environment. For me, it's a pen and a paper with journaling, sitting time with my thoughts. I do not know how you achieve clarity. We are bombarded constantly by input. And if you cannot shut that out and actually spend time to figure out what you want and where you want to go and define your why, it's going to be really hard to find lasting clarity. I think you might get glimpses of it, but then with all the inputs, you just get distracted. So with that as a preface, in 2022, we had relocated the family from where we worked together in Midland, Texas, to Idaho. And my wife was coaching college softball, and we were presented an opportunity that I knew at the time the institution where my wife was working and the goals that we had for our life and how we want to treat people were not aligned, nor were they ever going to align. It was just it was an unfortunate circumstance where
So give me some of the indications, Greg, because we talk a lot about the law of magnetism. What were some of those things that were either magnetizing you away or repelling you from? Like, what were, just for our audience, like, I think folks don't give enough regard to their gut, right? So we should always substantiate our gut, right? So you get a gut impulse and then you really, like you said, journal it out, figure out but what were some of those things that came out of that were some of the initial gut instincts or feelings or things?
Yeah, great question. The first for me, and it was a shift from probably like a lot of people, COVID. There are so many shifts that happened, but for me, it was a focus on who and not what and how. So I had to get very serious about who we want to do life with before trying to take the logical steps of, okay, what is step 1 through 3 of how we get there? So to answer your question directly, I started to pay attention to how do I feel and what type of reciprocity do I get with people that I come into contact with? Are people open and vulnerable? Are they courageous to speak their truth? Are they open to hearing my truth? And are they willing to listen? That's a huge thing for me. So when we started being approached by the situation I'm talking about, and you can cut this if it doesn't work, but had a young female approach my wife and I to adopt a child. And so we obviously prayed about it, spent some time thinking about it, but didn't have we had 3 days to make a decision. And you asked me how we achieved clarity. It was just a gut of saying, in 10 years, are we going to look back on this? One, is it important enough that we're going to remember it, first of all? So if it's important enough that we're going to remember it, I'm going to devote the time and attention to figuring out what's best. And ultimately for us, if I look back on my life and I look at the decisions that I've made that have been really impactful and really beneficial for me and my family, I can almost always say, if I choose hard, that it's going to be a better, and I don't mean hard as in super difficult. I just mean, does the path look a bit more uncertain, or is it a path that I know that if I take, I'm going to know the outcome? And if I embrace, and I want to be careful about how I phrase this, because it's not jumping off uncertain without making reasoned decisions, but if I make decisions and say, am I going to feel good about the person 10 years from now, if I look back, will I feel good about the person that I was if I made this decision?
Yep.
And as I've gotten older, man, that has gotten more, I'm getting chills talking to you about it. As I get older, that's gotten more and more important, that if I can say I will be proud of myself in 10 years for making that decision, knowing that it may be a way harder decision on myself or my family, that's the framework that I use to achieve clarity in decision making. I wished I'd have had that insight years ago.
I want to tie this into, so the first quadrant is clarity of your worldview. And so my great mentor, Vince Loftus, who is just a wonderful man out of Texas, he smacked me in the face one day with clarity. He said, there's only one decision you need to make in life, Chris. Serve yourself or serve other people. He said, if you want to serve yourself, that's fine. You're going to have a miserable existence. You'll get a lot of things. You'll spend a lot of money. You'll consume every possible thing that you want to consume. And ultimately, you'll be empty and unhappy. And we've seen that in a lot of folks in society where it's this self-focused. And so those two quadrants, just think of two circles. One is serve others and one is serve yourselves. We call it the me there or the we there. And so as you were thinking through this decision, and this is why it's so important to our clients or customers, potential acquisitions, or even our team, if they don't understand, am I here for something greater than myself, or am I here just for my selfish ambitions? I've got to establish that baseline with whoever I'm interacting with. And so that's why I know for you, the selfish decision, and we won't even go into the story, but it's an incredible story, was just to walk away and say, this is hard, this is complicated, it doesn't serve me, I'm not doing this. And so we've really coached on this worldview because I believe most human beings actually believe they are created to serve other people. And they're doing that, right? So giving money away to a nonprofit, donating your time, that's a selfless endeavor generally, but why do it unless you really have a worldview that creates an impact outside of yourself? We believe people are created to be creators and to serve. And so we think that the greatest life is taking your unique abilities, the things that you're better than anybody else, and using them to serve people. Now, in the business world, that generally creates a massive amount of profit, success, et cetera. But that's the tail end. That's kind of the benefit of it. That's not the reason you do it. So tell me a little bit about that. So I think there's just two worldviews, either serve yourself or serve others. So tell me a little bit about that, how that's manifested, even, continuing that conversation or that story that you had.
Yeah, I want to tell you, you mentioned Vince, had a mentor here in Austin. His name is Skip Crow, an old cowboy that I introduced you to. And Skip, for years, he exited a successful concrete company here in town, moved his wife up to a ranch in Colorado where they would bring college-age males and just work their ass off during the day. And when they were super tired around the dinner table as they're falling asleep in their food, they're having faith-based conversations. And he intentionally put them around cowboys, like guys that literally lived horseback on a ranch. And I asked Skip one time what the best advice or lesson he learned from those cowboys was, and he said two things. Cowboy said you need two things to serve. He said you need to be steady and you need to be handy. And so when I think about service to others, I think of Skip's words, and I think being steady. Are you dependable? Do you show up when you say you're going to show up? Do you do what you say that you're going to do? Can somebody count on you? One, you're being steady. Two, are you handy? Do you have a skill? Are you solving a problem for that person? Are you providing value? In today's world, I hear a lot of business owners bemoan the lack of quality labor, or it's just so hard to find good people. I would counter and say, business owners, if you were serving your employees as much as you expected them to serve you in your business, you would probably see a shift in their buy-in and their performance. So as I look at work that I do in the consulting space for clients, as I look at work that I do as a business owner of a small D2C e-com softball brand, if I'm doing all I can to, one, provide the value, and provide the value when I say that I'm going to provide it, picking up the phone when somebody calls, responding to client emails, giving in-house or contract employees the resources that they need, and then following up to ask, hey, how did that hit you? Where does that resonate? Where are you needing help? If people understand, the saying that nobody cares, what is it? Nobody cares how much you do, they care about how much you care. Exactly. Yeah, whatever that is.
For sure. Yeah.
So true. So from a service standpoint, effective leadership, as I see it today, is being vulnerable and open and transparent, being courageous enough to open yourself up to others, to say, here's who I am, here's what I'm good at, here's where I can provide value. Being honest about, hey, I can't do this for you. I think a lot of times I try to say, well, I'll just solve all the problems. There's a lot that I'm not good at. I mean, a lot. And so being transparent, open, and honest in a service capacity. One more story. When I was in the Navy, we were going through training. I had an officer from Boston. His name was Matt O'Laughlin. And we're going through this really tough training. And we had won an evolution or something. And so we're sitting on the beach, middle of the night. Everybody's freezing. We're lined up nut to butt in a row. And Matt pulls out these Snicker bars that he had hidden in his pockets and just passed them out to guys. It was the greatest Snicker bar I had ever eaten in my life. But I remember thinking, and again, getting goosebumps talking about it, but it's such a small thing, but it was the act of service to know that, oh, here's a leader that considered where we and he would be a little bit down the road, had planned for it, and had my best interest in mind at that time. I'd have run through anything for that guy. And I think people generally want to do the same thing. Leaders oftentimes do not take the time to get clear on how they can best serve their organization.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I hope that
Absolutely.
helps answer your question.
Yeah, I think we're living in a leadership desert in our country, and I would say actually globally. People, like you said, are bemoaning there's not enough employees. The reality is there are thousands, millions of people just looking for someone to lead them well, to serve them well, to love them well, to know them well. And I do believe that it's a lack of clarity. I'll never forget. So you and I worked in a business in Midland, and a lot of great things about that business, a lot of bad things about that business. And I can remember an afternoon where there was a dust storm rolling through Midland. And so for our listeners, like think of Fallujah, right? Like all you see is a brown cloud coming in, and I'm sitting in our conference room, and the dust is rolling into the conference room because the building was so old and the windows weren't sealed, and I'm starting to choke, and I'm getting dust on my clothes. It's covering the table. And I'm looking out and I'm like, how did I get here? Like, how did I get to living in a town that we had great relationships, great family, et cetera, a lot of great things, but I'm a mountain guy, right? I'm like, how did I get to living in the only place where the mountains, the biggest mountains were Prairie Dog Hills, right? It's like, so then I started saying like, all right, well, I don't have clarity, right? I don't have clarity on where I want to go, or maybe the path or my current reality. And that was such a pivot point for us to reframe our entire life. So we wanted to get clear, not only on the business side, but also on the personal side, to really have our faith, our family, our fitness, our finances, the kind of core 4 pillars dialed in, clarity, have clarity of the compelling future. So we already knew, like, we're here to serve people. We had clarity of our worldview, but we didn't really have clarity of what is our exact dream life we want to live, where are we today, which was lacking, and then what's the blueprint. And as we develop that platform, not only in our businesses, because we continue to buy additional businesses and put that into a curriculum, but in our personal life, that's what became such a passion of mine for coaching, because people don't have clarity. And I want to key on what you said before. Clarity, I believe, is often from removing things.
Yeah.
So you said remove noise, right? So go away with a journal. We have what we're in a coaching program called the Strategic Coach. They have what they call gold days. It's like whatever you would map out to be, that's your greatest day, you do it. It doesn't have to be what your spouse wants or your kids want. And so my greatest day is to be out in the mountains with a journal, with a good whiskey, go on a hike, read, journal, think, etc. That is where clarity is established. So we have more tools in our generation than we ever have had, right? AI will be revolutionary. It's going to change everything. But people have not said, hey, I'm going to get off social media and map out for me and my family what I want my life to look like, where we are today, in a blueprint. And that's really what we help people do in small business acquisition, in small business divestiture, or in optimizing your business. But then we go further, right? Like, a business is not a thing, it's people, right? So a business is nothing without the people. So if the owners or if the team members don't have clarity in their personal life, well, how can they achieve clarity in their professional life? Mm-hmm. And so we really back up. And if we're coaching somebody on how to sell their business, Most advisors go to the transaction, right? You know this, Greg. We say we're transition experts. We don't focus really that much on the transaction because that's fairly easy. What we want to do is help you get clarity first. Like, what is the life you want to live after you sell this business? What is the current reality of the business? And then we help you build a blueprint for that. And I just think most people just go straight to the, like, how do we sell it? What's the multiple? What's the price? And there was a study that they referenced at one of our learning sessions. 75% of all business owners who sell are very unhappy. Mm-hmm. And I dug into it, and it wasn't the price. It wasn't the transaction. It was no one had coached them on how to take their time, their talents, and their treasures and do that and amplify that into something amazing moving forward. So they sold this business and they lost their identity. Their identity was, I am a successful entrepreneur in my community and I employ people. And then 90 days later, they lost that identity and no one had coached them to get them clarity on what's next. So that's the piece that we really focus on. We love that piece because we feel like the marketplace doesn't spend enough time on that. And even when you buy a business, when we coach, when we talk business, you and I, Greg, it's always like, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah.
Well, if it's just, hey, we want to make a pile of money, well, you can make that doing a lot of things. But if it's, hey, it's to activate and equip others to live an exceptional life in whatever community we live in, man, that is pretty amazing. And that changes the lens by which I buy a business, the lens by which I coach people and even hire and fire, right? I have a lot more grace with my employees than maybe they deserve, but I've also been given a lot of grace. So I think that clarity like develops so many other things for your framework of how you live life. And that's the piece. Your parents generally don't teach you this stuff.
Yes.
Your managers don't teach you this stuff. Your teachers don't teach you this stuff in high school or college or business school. Your pastor doesn't teach you this stuff. So that's why this has become a platform. In this course we're building for how to sell your business, we start all with the clarity. We want you to get really clear before we even talk about, hey, these are the steps on how you sell a business. We want you to be absolutely clear on where you're going, what you want, what's your compelling future, your dream life, where you are, what's the blueprint, and then also your worldview. Is this just about you and you want to make a ton of money and exit and just live selfishly? Hey, we'll help you with that. We're not excited about that, but we'll help you with that. But if you're like, hey, no, I want this to be a transition so I can live another 20 years serving other people in a different capacity that I'm more excited about, that's something that we can really throw gasoline on. So I want to stop there, man.
Such great points. I want to make 2 quick points.
Yeah, continue.
You brought it up. So my wife coaches softball, and she last year coached in college. This year she was coaching in high school and coaching our daughters. The point that we see over and over again with parents who truly want nothing but the best for their kids is they focus on the performance and the game. The bigger point is what the game and all that preparation can do for you in a broader sense. What
Absolutely.
Can the game of softball provide that kid? Can it provide a college education? Can it provide them social skills? Can it provide them an understanding of how to work through challenges? Business is the same thing. Everybody focuses on the KPIs and the scorecards and the net revenues. Where you guys provide so much value is helping people to understand that the business is just a tool for achieving broader life-based goals and outcomes. And if that business is the only thing, you're missing the opportunity to direct the goals and the outcomes that you want, utilizing the business as the tool to get there.
Yeah,
y'all do it better than anybody else. You are so clear. The other point I wanted to make is without clarity of thought, those that have the ability to think most clearly are going to dominate business in the next 10 years. As technology ramps up and lowers the barrier of entry, it's the people that can think through and strategize and then hold themselves accountable to show up day in, day out. Those are the ones that are going to win. And the systems and the processes that you guys provide through the transition up to either the buying or the selling point make all the difference in the world. All the difference.
Do you like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss an episode by clicking the subscribe button now and check out our website, www.excoadvisors.com. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. Now, back to the show.
I love that, man. I love the coaching analogy because I've been coaching my son's baseball team. And clarity, I mean, we try to do one little lesson, right? So like, I don't care about baseball, right? Baseball is great. It's a cool sport, but life skills, right? If we can teach them, if they remember one thing that I say that changes their life in some positive way, that's the only reason I'm there, right? It's the same reason I want my son to play sports, is because he's interacting with great coaches. We only put our kids with great coaches if we're able to. And then we start with something. And the lesson last week is so simple, and everybody's heard this, but the kids were just kind of slopping around. And I'm like, hey, gentlemen, and these are 8-year-old boys, gentlemen, how you do the small things is how you do everything. So if you guys are forming a line and you're just kind of goofing around, and then your buddy catches I was just doing kind of outfield drills. He catches that ball and he throws it to the plate, and you're in the way because the line is now moved into the line of the path. You're going to get drilled right in the head. So how you do small things, just lining up where I've asked you to line up, being orderly, being ready to go, is how you do everything. And that is going to, hopefully we repeat these things 100,000 times with children. I feel like I'm just, audio recorder that says the same 5 things every day. But that clarity, trying to give them clarity of one piece, right? Like children, can't synthesize the whole thing, but if you can just say, hey, the small things, like how we do this, right? How you set your baseball bat. When you come into the dugout, if you throw it down on the ground, like that's how you do everything. So it's like, hey, no, it goes here. This is how we place it. Now it's ready for the next person. This is why. Even talking about receiving a ball, right? So kids are trying to catch it either way high or way low. And I'm like, okay, so your power position is you have the ball by your chest, so you can pull that ball out of your mitt and throw it. So if you're catching it, you're keeping it way up here and you're not in a position, instead of catching it here, bringing it here, having your hand, you're losing so much time for your team. So really, like the coaching piece of it, whether it's with our kids or whether it's in church or whether it's in the business, we love that. You just alluded to it, the concept of the integrated life. Business, we call ourselves capitalist missionaries. We just serve other people through business because that's our gifting. It could be something totally different, right? It could be being a nurse. It could be being a stay-at-home mom. It could be being a doctor or a lawyer or a missionary, a pastor. But that's our gifting. And so we've said, hey, we want to coach and help activate and equip people to live exceptional lives. How do we do that? Well, in the marketplace, because that's where we've got some skills.
How often do you find clients are misaligned at home and I'm asking selfishly because my wife and I own the softball business and work together. As I think through, hey, where should we go? I can't answer that question today because I haven't really talked through that with the spouse. So for a business owner that's running a business that wants to do X, Y, and Z, how many of them do you find are aligned completely at home that they've now got wind in their sails to move forward and make positive direction? Is that something that you see?
Almost never. And I would say like clarity, that's why we start with these 4 quadrants, because if you don't have clarity in your personal life, you don't have clarity in your business, right? How you do the small things is how you do everything. This thing reads through every single thing. So we talk a lot about the architecture of life. I believe life has a certain architecture that we live within, and there's constants. And clarity is what reveals these things to you. As you get clearer, I think more of that architecture is revealed. But if you don't have alignment with your family, like you don't have alignment anywhere. And that's so critical. And I do a bad job of this, to be honest. Like, this is a daily conversation you've got to have with your wife, right? About, hey, are we still living our dream life? And we lived in Texas for almost 10 years. And I would say about 5 years in, I started feeling that magnetism that like, hey, this is not for us anymore. It's time to go. And my wife was not aligned with that. And until we got to the point where we aligned, that's when it was like, it's go time. But I think that absolutely, man. So I ask a question of everyone I interview. And generally, if you found me in a coffee shop with somebody random, I would start with this question. And Simon Sinek and other people have made it famous, but it's really like that. Hey, what's your purpose? What's your why? Like, why are you here on this earth? And I've interviewed hundreds of people for our businesses. Never once, ever in the hundreds of interviews has anybody had, oh yeah, I've thought about this and this is what it is.
Yeah.
It's serve people, serve God, whatever it might be. Hey, I want to make $1 bajillion and I don't care about people. That's my purpose. it's always like, oh, that's a really good question. Well, it might be something about family and, I want to have a good life. And it's like, okay, well, if your whole life, right, the why behind your life, the reason behind your life, the purpose behind your life, if you haven't taken even 20 minutes to think through that, write it on a piece of paper, it doesn't even have to be that good. It could just be like, hey, I want to build a better life for my family than what they had. I want to make good money. I want to retire with dignity. I want to serve, whatever. Like, most people haven't even thought that out. So as I coach our team, before we really start with, the habit building and really kind of building them into kind of these elite performers, we have to build this firm foundation of like, well, you need to understand where you're going and why you're doing what you're doing before we talk about a 1-year plan and a 90-day action plan and your personal scorecard. And that is that clarity piece that's so important. So that's why we always start with that. Now, once you get clarity, right, then you've got to commit to it. So it's kind of the 4 C's. It's get your clarity, and then you commit to it. And then you've got to have consistency. So consistent action every day. And then you've got to have courage, because you're going to get punched in the face consistently. And if you don't have the courage to get back up, it doesn't matter. So clarity alone, doesn't matter. Yeah, you should get clear. But if you get clear and then you do nothing with it and you're not consistent and you have courage, it really doesn't matter. But I'm finding that step 1, which I believe is attaining clarity, most people haven't even gotten to that step 1. And that's a piece that we love. So we had a potential client that I went and met with yesterday. He owns a big sawmill. And I started asking him, okay, map me out your dream transition. Like, what's the perfect buyer? Like, what's the transition timeline? What do you want your employees, how do you want them to be taken care of? What are your clients? How do you grow this thing? Like, map this out. And he was all over the place. He had about 10 different ways that he was hoping this thing would go down. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, now I need you just to sit down and take some time to really think through, like, give me clarity on what this transition needs to look like and what you want to do next, right? Are you wanting to be retired in golf and that's it? And that's what I need to help you attain? Or is it, no, you really want to coach? And so just from that first conversation, we unlocked some nuggets. And one of them was, he's like, no, I love sustainable forestry. And there's very few people your age, he was talking to me, that actually want to do that or understand how to take care of our forests. And I said, boom. So what would that look like if we sold your business and you were able to continue to do that, where you don't have the daily commitment every day, but you're still coaching up the next generation? So just a few questions. And that's why I love this, right? Is like having a conversation with somebody in your tribe. The collaboration achieves a level of clarity you'll never achieve by yourself. But if you can start there and then take that journal and say, man, Greg provided these thoughts and ideas and questions. Now I'm kind of refining them. Mm-hmm. You bring them back for more feedback, right? Hey, this is what I came up with. A lot of the clarity that we help people achieve is really, hey, you say you want these things, but what about your family? Mm-hmm. What about the relationships? What about your fitness, right? Like, what's your health going to look like if you just do these things? And so if we can start, and we always say, you must be clear to get from here to there, right? So you must be clear to get from here to there. So anyways, brother, what else? Any stories or things you want to end with? This has been an absolute pleasure. We've kind of gone over the 30-minute mark. I could riff on this for 5 to 10 hours, but I want to be respectful of our listeners' time. What else, man? Any closing remarks just on clarity?
I just want to reiterate the importance of removing external inputs from your life to allow yourself the space to let the thoughts that are bubbling in the back of your head come to the forefront. All the social media and emails and phone calls and TV and this and that, for me, just pushes that stuff to the back. And, you wonder, for me, it's the shower. Everybody's got that place where they always have these great ideas. I challenge you as a listener to think, is that a place that I am plugged into something? Or is that place where I have those ideas more the result of being disconnected? That the disconnection from external stimulus is the key to unlocking whatever it is that you have in front of you. That I think those that remain connected and inundated ultimately are going to get used by the technology. And those that can disconnect, step back. Jocko talks about taking a step back from the firing line, 2 inches back to get perspective. Those that are willing to make space and time can use all of these incredible resources that technology has given us to plan and map their future. But it will not happen unless you're intentional about using the technology versus letting it use you.
I love it, man. I love it. That's an awesome place to end. Remove the noise to get clear. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Exceptional Business Podcast. Greg, love you, brother. Love having you here and look forward to many more conversations down the road.
Love you, man. Thank you.
Adios.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Exceptional Companies Podcast. Make sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or via RSS so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes, or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you liked this show, please reach out through our website, www.excoadvisors.com, for free tools to order a copy of Selling Main Street, or to sign up for our free webinar on how to sell your Main Street business.